We're on a mission from God.
Wendy?
So I got that going for me.
Darling?
Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Light of my life.
We enjoy your films.
I am a human being.
I thought they smelled bad on the outside.
Welcome to Vintage Video, where we'll be reviewing every major film release of the 1980s in real time. I'm Patrick O'Reilly.
I'm Jesse Bayless.
And I'm Richard Wallace.
And today marks the 40th anniversary of the release of Don't Answer the Phone! On February 29th, Leap Day, 1980. It was written by Robert Hammer and Michael D. Castle, adapted from the novel Nightline by Michael Curtis, directed by Robert Hammer, and released by Crown International Pictures.
Hey!
You know the story about Crown International Pictures?
I do.
Very entertaining story.
I probably shouldn't say too much, because I don't know, but they are in the same building as me, and I know some of the people who work there.
Well, there you go. And it's for sure the same one?
Oh yeah, it is definitely the same one.
That's interesting. They've been running for so long.
Did you ask them about this terrible movie?
I did not. Most of the people there are much younger, and I don't think that they would have any kind of knowledge or connection to this movie, except maybe a renewal of the distribution deal, if any exists.
Yeah, I'm not sure anybody's really working on that one right now.
On one of the IMDb actors' profiles, like all the pictures of him were from this movie. I think it was the killer character, but all the pictures were really nice, clean, high def. Like I think there must be a relatively recent remaster,
like a Shout Factory or something.
That's not what we watched. We watched a DVD, but. So this movie was shot over the course of 18 days with no permits for any of the exteriors. So everything in Hollywood was just people running around with cameras. Flo Lawrence, who played the Dr. Gale, and James Westmoreland, who played the lead investigator detective character, hated each other. They hated each other so much that...
I hated them too.
Feeling is mutual.
On the day of their love scene, she ate a bunch of onions and he didn't shave to make it as uncomfortable as possible for the other person.
Awesome.
Nicholas Worth, our killer, improvised most of his dialogue.
Really? So he was, in fact, just a psycho.
No, he was great. I loved him.
When he was doing his whole, like, Stewart thing, I'm good enough, I'm
smart enough.
And doggone it, people like me.
I think it was interesting that he had like a special credit, like, and was it introducing or featuring?
Oh, maybe.
Featuring, what's his name, Patrick Worth?
Nicholas Worth.
Nicholas Worth as
Are you just conflating me and this killer?
Yes, my brain, I just like, Patrick Killer. Yeah.
That sounds right. You're not supposed to be telling people about my hobbies. Except this podcast. Tell as many people as you can. The car that the killer drove, the camo jacket he wore, and the home that he lived in all actually belonged to director Robert Hammer. So they just filmed in the director's house and used his car for the production. The original title was The Hollywood Strangler, which I think is
better,
more apt.
That's so much better.
Yeah.
It's actually what the movie's about, because at no point in this movie, except maybe the first scene, would there be a reason not to answer the phone.
Right.
Because... like it's not like Scream or anything like that, where like the killer's calling you and he's luring you out so that he knows you're home and he can come get you or anything like that. But no other point in the film is there a phone call that you're like, oh, now you're in trouble. You answered the phone.
I did read a review that said that might have been trying to play off the popularity of When a Stranger Calls from 1979, but you're right. There's no phone call situation that happens. This movie also has the rare distinction of being one of 154 films declared a video nasty in the UK. Are you familiar with the phrase video nasty?
I am not.
Okay, I'm glad that you aren't, because I'm excited to share this information with you. With the advent of home video, a number of films famously bypassed the NVALA, which is the UK version of the MPAA, on home video market. They became known colloquially as video nasties. Following a moral campaign led by famous social conservative Mary Whitehouse and the NVALA, local jurisdictions began to prosecute video releases for obscenity. They were sorted into 3 sections. So Section 1 contained 39 films that were actually prosecuted, like successfully prosecuted as violations of the Obscene Publications Act of 1959. I've only seen 2 of the movies on this list.
Is one of them Caligula?
No. Faces of Death and Last House on the Left were two movies from the top.
Really? Last House
section.
on the Left?
Yeah. I mean, it has some pretty brutal rape scenes.
Yeah, but all right.
By the way, this might not be the most kid-friendly podcast. Again, we're sticking to our rule of not saying anything you can't say on television, but this is a dark film, so there's going to be some disgusting things discussed. A few other movies from Section 1 that I haven't seen but I'm familiar with are Cannibal Holocaust and I Spit on Your Grave. And Section 2 had 33 films that they attempted to prosecute but that avoided prosecution. Those included The Beyond, The Evil Dead, and The Funhouse, the first Evil Dead. Mm-hmm. Don't Answer the Phone actually landed in Section 3, which includes films that could not be prosecuted for obscenity but were liable to seizure and confiscation under a less obscene charge, which meant that tapes seized under Section 3 could be destroyed after distributors or merchants forfeited them. They could just walk into a store and be like, you can't sell these movies, destroy them all, or give them to us. As the least extreme category, it features the most recognizable titles. So you have Dawn of the Dead, Friday the 13th 1 and 2, Hills Have Eyes, Night of the Living Dead, Phantasm, Prom Night, Scanners, Suspiria, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and The Thing were all in Section 3 with this movie.
Yeah, like,
Really?
They're not, some of them, like...
Phantasm doesn't have much at all in it.
I don't know the reasoning behind why these movies were included, but...
This was a lot like pirate radio to me.
Sure, yeah.
Like the British government just going ape over
and this,
everything.
This woman, Mary Whitehouse, is kind of like... Do you know who Jack Thompson is?
I do not.
He's a guy who has led every major American protest against violent video games. Or he did for a long time. I think he's kind of faded into obscurity now. But this woman is like that for movies in the UK, where she was like, you know, family first, like very important. Like, we have to save the children from this nonsense.
Won't somebody please think of the children?
Exactly. But weirdly, 5 of the Video Nasty titles start with the word don't. Section 1 had Don't Go in the Woods. Section 2 had Don't Go in the House, Don't Go Near the Park, and Don't Look in the Basement. And then this one
Was that
3.
one movie?
None of them are connected to each other. None of them are sequels.
Was that last one just one movie?
No, that would be funny. But my favorite of those is Don't Go Near the Park. It's like, not don't go to the park, don't even go near it.
Don't even look at it.
Don't even think about that park.
I don't want to. We do not talk about the park.
I wouldn't be surprised if all the don'ts were at least part of the inspiration for Edgar Wright's Don't trailer and the Rodriguez-Tarantino double feature Grindhouse.
Where does Don't Stop Believing fall in this?
Although, in interviews, Edgar Wright specifically credits a movie called Don't Open the Window, a.k.a. Let Sleeping Corpses Lie, a.k.a. The Living Dead at the Manchester Morgue, a.k.a. Do Not Profane the Sleep of the Dead.
I like that one.
Apparently, Edgar Wright thought it was funny that, not unlike this movie, the title refers to nothing in particular. There is no big window scene in Don't Open the Window. That movie, though, did not make the Video Nasty list. I thought it was weird that Caligula didn't make the list, but when I searched for it, I came across a movie in Section 1 called Caligula Reincarnated as Hitler. That's the name of a movie. But yeah, so that's Video Nasties. So, I'm sure we'll cover more of them over the course of this podcast.
Yeah, like what years are these from?
It seems like the earliest ones are like, obviously Night of the Living Dead was in 1968, but most of them are like late 70s and early to mid 80s.
I feel like this was part of this list is just ask, it's like they put this list together as a list of what movies we should watch because they're amusingly
in a not too distant universe, I'm hosting a podcast called Video Nasties, and we just cover this entire list of movies. Although the only one I've seen from Section 1, or one of the 2 that I've seen from Section 1, Faces of Death, features like not fake deaths of humans.
What?
There's accident footage and stuff like that they used in the movie. So it's pretty traumatizing. Like, I'm not suggesting people go out and look up all of Section 1 and go try and watch them. It's pretty depressing footage.
I will not be participating in this podcast.
Yes,
yeah,
no.
I think Richard barely got through this movie.
Well, you've seen Cannibal Holocaust or no?
No,
okay.
I will not watch that.
Okay. I know there's some pretty disturbing stuff in there, to the point that they literally like dragged the director into court to say, prove that you didn't murder these people. Mm-hmm. And he had to like fly the actress into the country to be like, look, I'm alive. They didn't kill me on set. because it was like that convincing of a murder scene.
Yikes.
But yeah, so this movie, we start in Kirk Smith's apartment where he is posing in front of a weird like religious set that he built in his home. And then we cut immediately to him following a nurse into her home, presumably at the end of a shift at a hospital. She speaks briefly on the phone with her, air quotes, mother.
Yeah. I was like, is she talking about her mother or talking
I was like,
to
hold on.
her
She
mother?
shouldn't say mom. What is the word I'm missing here? Because that's not a woman on the phone.
No, she said it repeatedly.
Yeah.
That she was talking to her mother, but it was clearly like the director or the producer or some man, putting on like a Monty Python female voice.
But yeah, by the end of the phone call, she's saying like mom 2 or 3 times in a sentence, and I'm like, no, she's clearly supposed to be talking to her mother. But yeah, I think it was probably the director, and then they just never bothered to re-record the ADR.
Oh yeah, we're gonna replace that. Oh shoot. Oh well,
I feel like
fine.
that had to be at the premiere. They were like, oh, whoops. Forgot. But yeah, so he strangles this woman to death with a stocking that has a coin in it on like her kitchen table, basically.
Yeah.
And then we cut to him driving a car, which is weird to get the killer's perspective immediately after the murder.
Right.
Because usually you're going into like, oh, meet the innocent people. But here we're just like following the killer around. And he's listening to the radio describe what he did the night before. And that the police are officially calling it like a serial killer, because this is the 5th woman who's been killed in a similar way. So they're starting to tell people, oh, be on the lookout for someone trying to murder you.
Don't answer the phones.
Yeah, don't answer your phones, whatever you do.
That has nothing to do with this.
Please answer your phones. It's important. Otherwise, people can't reach you. Then the guy reading the news on the microphone hands it over to Dr. Lindsay Gale, who is like she's
The Fraser Crane
of
this radio station.
She's a licensed psychologist who has a call-in show. She also has she operates a facility on her own.
Yeah, but it's like a free clinic. It's a
Right.
weird, like definitely catering to low-end clientele.
Where she immediately refers them to somebody else.
Yes. While we're seeing her sit down and start to introduce her show, we're seeing Kirk like randomly trying to pick girls up as models off the street. He's just like stopping girls and like, oh, by the way, I take pictures and here's my card. And the girl's boyfriend walks up and he's like, what is this? Who are you talking? Get away from this guy. What are you doing? And drags her away. The first caller to this radio show says that her son cut up the goldfish with scissors and is threatening to do the same thing to the little sister. And it's like, kind of want to hear how the rest of that call went.
Yeah, but also, like you're calling in to be like, what? Should
What
I do
should I
something?
do?
Is this a bad sign? It's like, oh, good Lord, you need to immediately separate him from other humans and
Like,
get
where
him
is he?
help.
Do you have eyes on him right now?
Yeah, this is not good.
But then the second caller is Kirk calling in, pretending to be someone named Ramon and speaking in a very exaggerated...
Ramon.
Yeah.
They like to roll their R's in this movie when
Yeah.
they say his name.
Even she does.
Yeah.
Like she's being very respectful
Ramon.
to the pronunciation of his name.
But he calls in complaining about headaches, which I'm not even sure that he is experiencing. Because so much of this character is completely made up. I don't know if he's just improvising stuff.
I think that he's supposed to. I think it's supposed to be part of the symptoms of his
That he's a Vietnam vet that has some sort of like literally like brain scarring, and he gets terrible headaches that cause his psychosis or whatever.
What is brain scarring?
Well, it could be literal scarring, like he had a brain injury, like from an explosion.
Okay.
The cops are investigating the nurse's home, and this like CSI guy thinks that he's a comedian.
Yeah, he's horrible.
Yeah, he's making a bunch of jokes about it, and he's like, "Did you get a picture of the breast?" And he's like, "Which one?" And he's like, "The one that was almost bitten off. Did you get a picture of that for the file?" The guy playing this lab tech is the guy who wrote the movie. But he has a lot of off-color jokes. He's supposed to be like the hilarious coroner character, but he's just obnoxious in every scene.
He's no Arthur Mallet.
He's no Arthur Mallet from one episode of MacGyver. He's also not what's the character's name from Dexter that constantly makes jokes about dead bodies? But yeah, so the cops somehow determined that the stalking that they've seen is like very popular with like the Viet Cong population, and so they think that he might be a Vietnam vet, and that he bought like a big pack of these stockings to strangle people with.
Oh, stockings.
Yes.
I kept hearing you say stalking, and I'm like, there's a particular type of stalking that like Vietnam
Yes.
vets.
It was called the Vietnam War.
Okay, but you're talking about stockings. There's a particular kind of stockings.
Silk stockings.
I don't understand your weird Wisconsin pronunciations. But yes, stockings.
Okay.
Stockings.
Not stalking. Like
I'm not pronouncing the L.
I felt like you did, because I was pretty sure you were talking about him stalking people.
When you're talking about Stephen Hawking and you want
Wait,
to shorten his
talking or
name.
talking?
Saying Pam or Pam?
So they think he's possibly a Vietnam vet. We cut to Kirk lifting weights very aggressively in his home. A woman meets with Dr. Gale in her free clinic area to discuss some childhood abuse that she went through. And Dr. Gale is terrible.
Oh, yeah,
it's
not
something
good at her
akin
job.
to that cop in Windows.
Yeah.
A lot of victim blaming in this conversation.
Yeah.
She's like, she says that her father abused her, and she says, "And you let him?" And it's like, what is your problem?
What? Let your father have his way?
This is not her agency. And then she says, immediately she's like, "You're right. I don't even deserve you. You're so great." And it's like, "You're right. You don't deserve me. Anyway, try not to get raped by people, you jerk." So they're laughing about it now. Kirk follows this woman home, where she sits down at her desk in her room and undresses herself a little bit, and then just starts fondling her breasts. Just staring into a mirror, fondling her own breasts.
This is the point at which Patrick turns to me and says, "This is what women do when they're alone, right? This is clearly not a movie written by men."
No. This is a standard practice.
What I loved about this whole build-up was him following her, and every time it was on him, the music went, and then it would cut to just silence when it's on her.
Yeah.
But then when he peeks up in the window, it's like, it's like the sound
Like the music is like he's
him.
literally making that sound. We cut back to this weird scene at the police station where the lab tech guy has his legs up on someone else's desk, and this woman is yelling at him like, "Get your legs off of my desk or I'm going to break them. You guys need to solve this murder and get out of my way." And he's like, "Relax, he just killed somebody. He's not going to kill anybody for like 3, 4, 5 days.
Yeah.
Everybody can rest easy tonight." And then we cut to him just murdering this woman that he followed home.
And I don't know how he knew, or if it was just happenstance that he's using like, "Daddy's got you. Daddy's gonna keep you safe."
Yeah.
And I was like, how did he know?
It would have been one thing if she had called into the radio program and the whole session had been public knowledge. But the fact that he wasn't in the room with them, it's like, why does he know what happened? Unless like he's been casing these people for months.
Or maybe he says this to everyone.
Maybe. That's true. So we have this quick scene with a scientist professor type guy in a room full of detectives explaining what serial killers are and what different types of them are. He basically feels a lot like the guys from Mindhunter. I'm sure he was based on those guys because he seems like an FBI type specialist.
But the police don't seem to care at all.
Yeah, and the same thing happens in Mindhunter.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that
all
was-
the cops are
that was
like,
kind of
whatever,
the-
like, get out of here. Like, you're so smart, you know everything about serial killers. And they're like, no, we have like profiles that are accurate and they help us track people down. Yeah. And even the room looks like it's the same room as there's a specific scene in Mindhunter that just looks so much like what's happening here.
And I think that was just the mentality at the time, and they're representing that well.
But yeah, I thought it was interesting that they bothered to even include that angle.
But then we get a montage of police work.
Yeah, just handing papers to each other and music playing.
Pointing to things on maps and drawing arbitrary lines on said map.
Yeah.
And then agreeing with said lines.
That's a good line. I'm proud of that line. And then the cops are in Dr. Gale's office, and without really warning her properly. He just hands her a picture of the mutilated corpse of the woman who just left her free clinic, and she just starts sobbing immediately. He says, so I'm going to need the file for this patient. And she says, not without a court order. And he's like, okay, here's the court order. And she's like, no, I don't want to give it to you. It's like trying to solve a series of heinous murders.
Right.
Can you maybe hand over that file? What am I going to do to this woman that hasn't already been done?
Like, I totally get, like, protecting, you know, patient-client privilege type stuff. But, like, at the point at which you have a court order, you'd be like, yeah, here you go. Please find this murderer.
Yeah.
And it also makes
Can
her a
I help
hypocrite.
you in any other way?
I have voiced my concerns
Yeah.
and my opposition to this, but you have a court order. I have done my job
Yeah.
as the psychologist.
And also, I just gave you that as the one thing you would need to do on the path to getting this file, was give me a court order. And it seems like the conflict between these two characters is that she's mad because he wants to murder the murderer when she wants to cure him. She's like, what are you going to do? Put him in front of a firing squad? And he's like, that's not a bad idea. But she's like, well, you know, this is a mental illness. We can fix this man. It's like, he doesn't want to do it. So that's the conflict between these two characters. We get a couple quick shots of the Cinerama Dome mixed into our montage of just Hollywood at night.
Yeah, the whole everything up until the woman who's about to jump off the building is pretty much a blur.
Yeah.
For me, except for the whorehouse massage parlor bus, which I can't remember if it even occurs before or after that.
I think it's before.
Because there's another amazing montage
Yes.
of asking people questions on the street and them just saying no.
Yeah, over and over again. Kirk is entertaining a model at his home, and he starts to do this shoot where she's wearing like a biker jacket, and he handcuffs her for some pictures of a person handcuffed, and then just as soon as she starts questioning it, he loses his patience and kills her. The lab tech finds that woman's body, or he doesn't find the body, but he's there at the scene of that body being found at like the reservoir or a river somewhere. And they're like, it's like he's not even trying to hide the bodies. It's like he's rubbing it in our faces that he's just leaving these people everywhere.
But I think we're slowly starting to show, like, he's getting more and more careless.
Right. Kirk is crying in shadows at his home. So much of his home is very poorly lit, and so we can just barely make out what's going on half the time.
This is just like Windows.
Yeah.
Just like, we're just gonna half light this movie. We're gonna
Yeah.
have some really dramatic shadows, and you're not gonna be able to tell half of what's going on.
It seems like the Kirk character in this movie reminds me of the Dark Knight Joker, because he seems like he's playing like 4 different kinds of psychopath, like alternating. Where I think Heath Ledger was doing it on purpose. I think this guy's just not didn't really like nail down what kind of a crazy person he wanted to be. So every scene where he's being a crazy person, it's a different kind of crazy person. They all feel like monologue auditions for the next movie.
We have a couple of like Travis Bickle kind of moments, and
and then there's like a couple like, I'm not good enough for you, Dad, like shouting at his ceilings, and then just like crying. Or like the weird affirmations.
Like the roiding out kind of just,
so there's a lot of, this guy is multidimensional. Gale meets with a woman who has a drug problem, and she makes her shout that she has a drug problem over and over again. That's her way of curing it.
Another grand example of how good she is at, treating people.
The cops end up seeing a psychic. I don't know who recommended a psychic go to the station to talk to the cops, but he seems to really know what he's talking about, which is weird because he doesn't come back for any more of the movie, but they do meet with a psychic who has a lot of information.
Well, except for the fact that they, at some point, apparently it's just kind of the throwaway line later where they thought the psychic was the killer
because of how much he knew.
But he had an alibi, or he was with his wife or something.
Well, it turns out that he is the personal psychic of the wife of one of the other people on the task force. So that's where he
got the information?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I missed that one.
I missed that part of it.
Yeah,
but I like when he walks in and he's like, I sense you are unhappy with this meeting, that you think nothing will come from it. And he's like, 2 for 2. He's just like, all right, this guy's a real psychic. But it turns out he was on tour and he was 7,000 miles away when the murders happened, so he couldn't have been involved. Kirk meets with a pornographer and says, here's some pictures I took Do you want them? And he's disgusted by one photo in particular, which it sounds like a woman has a bunch of candles stuck in her. And the guy thinks that's gross. And
but I'll take it anyway.
But I'll take the rest of them. But this one disturbs me. And he's like, well, fine, that one's not for sale. And he's like, well, hold on now. Let's talk about numbers. He's playing hard to get with this last picture.
He's the J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah. but so then he picks up this prostitute and he takes her to an apartment across the street because she doesn't talk business on the street. And he tells her to call into the radio program. So now she's literally on the phone with Dr. Gale and says, oh, I'm here with this guy and he said he gets headaches and he told me to call you. And I'm a prostitute, but I don't want to be a prostitute anymore.
Well, my mom got me into it, so, you know.
Yeah. You know, moms. But then he kills her during the call, and she immediately goes to the cops with the recording. And it's like, here's a recording of what I think is the killer. A woman described a man, and she was killed or hurt during the phone call. And here's another phone call that I got from someone else who also got headaches that I think is the same person. And he called himself Ramon. So there's a lead for you. And then the pimp that was across the street, when he first met the prostitute, comes into the apartment to check on the girl. And then Kirk goes crazy and just beats him to the ground. Doesn't kill him, but smashes a bottle over his head.
I think he does think he kills him, but he doesn't.
Well, he at least knows that he overpowered him and thinks he's cool for overpowering him. Like, he's starting to get this, like, invincibility complex where he's like, oh, I can't do anything wrong. I can beat anybody. So
the cops figure out that there was a third person at this murder scene because
like,
there's additional blood there and it's not, you know, either of the other two.
Right. And so they're like, oh, maybe it was the pimp coming to check on the prostitute. So they're like, okay, who's in that neighborhood? And they narrow it down to this one guy, and that's the guy who they're showing the picture to everybody, like, where is he? And then the
drunk informant tells him he's down at this massage parlor.
Right.
And they talk him down from like $50 to $20
to like $7 or something.
Yeah, but then he gives him $5. At the end, he gives him $5.
But so it seems like they basically are using the massage parlor as a front. Mm-hmm. So it's like, even though that part was already illegal, they're like, oh, people are just assuming that that's going on here, so they're not going to look around for people dealing drugs.
Right.
So they go into this place, and they're not with Vice. So they really don't care what's happening here. They're just here for information on this murder. Mm-hmm. But when they talk to the woman downstairs, she calls up and says, it's a bust. There's
Everyone
cops
clears
here.
out.
Everyone get out. And as word gets through the massage parlor that it's a bust, all these people in various states of undress are running out of the building as quickly as they can.
Including your favorite guy who's wearing like this
There's a
like
guy
red underwear and
he's wearing
clear pants, like totally transparent pants.
Yeah,
over
he
top
has
of
plastic pants on outside of... And do you know who that guy was?
No.
It's Don Lake. Do you know who Don Lake is?
That name sounds familiar.
He's a comic actor. He has a lot of credits. He's in a bunch of Christopher Guest movies. But my favorite scene with this character is when he says,
Name? Mario. Last name? Mario. Okay, what's your name?
Luigi.
Luigi?
No, Luigi Mario.
he's the one who goes, it's a bust, and then runs out of the apartment building.
That's amazing. I as soon as you said Don Lake, I knew that name from somewhere.
Yeah, he's been on a lot of TV stuff, but I mostly recognize him from Christopher Guest movies, but I was like, there's something else. There's something, and I was scrolling through his IMDb, and I was like, oh my god, Super Mario Brothers. This is totally the cop that finds out that Mario's name is Mario. But they think it's hilarious after the guy shouts, it's a bust, and then runs out of the building. They're like, he's like, oh, do you have an extra ring? Like he was going to propose to that guy who just ran out of the building. They walk into the room where the pimp was supposed to be at the end of the hall, and when they get inside, there's just a woman doing like coke off of the desk which still has like some powder from when they ran out of the room.
Yeah, there was a struggle to get the drugs because the guy was going to flush them, and then the pimp was like, no, and the bag just kind of exploded in the air.
Right, and we wouldn't want anything to go to waste.
But she's just doing it off of the desk and laughing about it. And then when the cops step back into the hallway, they see the pimp trying to escape, and he turns around and points a gun at them. And they fire at him like 12 times.
I like the pimp in this scene because he's got this big, like, white bandage on the top of his head,
where
back
Kirk
of his
hit him
head.
with the lamp or whatever.
Where he got hit, but it makes him look so funny. This big white bandage on the top of his head.
They're also firing directly at like an open window that leads out onto the street. I was like, that's a super dangerous direction to be firing your weapon.
But I love the line that it's like we got some paperwork to fill out. It's like, what do you mean we? I missed.
That's so great.
I
laughed out loud at that line.
I think that these two characters are like the inspiration for the law part of Law and Order. Because the one guy who said I miss is clearly like the Jerry Orbach character.
Sure, yeah. Now that they've killed the only person who had any information, they have to find a new lead. This is when the drug addict patient is suddenly on the top of a building and decides she's going to jump. And the licensed psychologist is trying to talk her down. She just got there like 15 minutes ago. Yeah. She's not making any progress because she's terrible at her job.
Clearly, my words didn't help you.
Not just terrible at her job, but when the cop shows up to like help out, like she's just like, yeah, fine, you do it, like, and walks away.
Like, I don't care
just
about
like,
this
yeah,
person.
whatever, I don't need to be doing this. Like, no,
not like I'm board certified and I have a doctorate.
Right? It's like I know the best way to talk to her. Like she's my patient. It's just like, yeah, no, good, have at it.
She was bored, all right.
Yeah,
certified bored.
Certified bored. And then the cop just negs her off the ledge by being like, "Hey, idiot, come down here, you dumb. What are you, dumb?" And she's like, "You're right, I am dumb." And she comes down and hugs him. And then he turns to the psychiatrist and is like, "Hey, let's go get drunk." And she's like, "Yeah, we should get drunk."
Yeah, you clearly know how to treat women. Let's do this.
Yeah, she's like, I could use a drink. And then it cuts to her drinking water.
Yeah. And then she's like, "I'll get us another round." It's like, you're drinking water. So they get drunk, and then he goes back to her apartment to sleep with her. Mm-hmm. The next morning, Kirk is just walking through like a residential neighborhood and says... He stops a woman on the street and says, "Hey, do you know where so-and-so lives?" And she's like, "Oh, it's the house with the green door." So he goes up to this door and he goes and he knocks on it and he pretends to be a photographer sent by this woman's agent so that he can get inside to take pictures of her. But she's not falling for it, and she's kind of double booked anyway.
Well, she does fall for it because she says, "Oh, no, I already had my pictures taken." And he says, "Oh, I can't believe that they messed this up." And she goes, "Oh, they're always messing that up."
Yeah.
But where is he getting his inside information
on his victims?
I don't know. That's a good question.
That's true. They never really cover that for the girl with the dad and this character. Mm-hmm. But so he goes into the home and says, "Can I use your phone to call your agent to try and straighten this whole thing out?" And he calls and pretends that he wasn't around. And then, but he leaves his book of photos on the coffee table for her to look at in case she changes her mind and wants to get some pictures taken. And as she's going through them, she sees the disturbing one that the pornographer didn't like. And she's like, "Oh my God, that's gross." And he's like, "That's my best work." And then he freaks out on her and attacks her against the couch. And he's almost completely choked her, maybe already completely choked her by the time her roommate comes out. Yeah, also
she's
topless.
She's been screaming for a while. Yeah. I feel like I would have been out sooner.
I was like, player 3 has entered the game.
Yeah.
I was like, who is this person that has been waiting all this time?
Also naked though.
Wait, but she did the first one come out like she had just showered? She was in a robe.
She was wearing. She basically, when she hears the knock at the door, she's like, "Hold on a second," and she closes her robe and basically just pulls it shut, but doesn't fasten it or anything.
It's the opening scene of Log Jammin'.
Right. But when he's standing with her in front of the couch, he just yanks her robe down around her waist.
Yeah.
But then when the roommate comes in, she's just topless.
Yeah. That's how I go to address any issues I hear in my house. Like after I jump out of the shower and, like I hear somebody at the door, I'm going to run out here naked and find out what's happening.
Yeah.
This will be a distraction.
But at first it looks like she's not doing much good because she's just screaming while he's choking her friend to death. But then she takes some initiative and she picks up a lamp and smashes it over his head. But unfortunately, her friend's already dead, and it just pisses this guy off enough to jump over the couch and strangle her against the wall in the kitchen.
With his hands.
Yeah. So now they're both dead. But he left his camera at the house when he left in...
Right, because a neighbor comes over trying to knock on the door and see what's happening.
The same woman who pointed out the home in the first place.
Yeah, and but he books it out the back door or something like that and leaves all his stuff behind.
So the cops find the cameras and they're like, oh, this guy takes like pornographic photography. Let's go talk to the local pornographer.
Yeah. Well, they had found earlier on. They had found evidence of a
part of a film box.
Yeah.
But it was like a burnt film box. Like
it was in the ashtray at the nurse's apartment.
Did he burn this thing while he was there? I don't know. That seemed weird that they found a piece of the film box and they thought it was, oh, this is a clue.
Yeah.
It's just like, if you really need to get rid of the film box, put it in your pocket.
Yeah.
Because film boxes, especially for 35mm film, aren't big.
Yeah.
It can squish down pretty easily.
But they're also, it was 1980. Everybody had them in their houses.
Mm-hmm.
But so they go to see the pornographer that Kirk sold his pictures to, and he's just this big fat guy sitting in the corner of an office.
Mm-hmm.
And they show him all the pictures, and he's like, oh yeah, no, I know who takes these pictures. He recognizes the especially disturbing one, and he's like, the guy's name is Kirk Smith, and it's like, he's using his real name for everything.
Yeah.
He used it with this guy. He used it when he answered the door at the woman's house.
It's like, I know, I'm going to take smutty pictures and I'm going to sell them under my real name.
Well, it's not just that. He's also murdering people and leaving a trail of, like, his own name everywhere that he goes.
I like when the Jerry Orbach character picks up the one picture off the desk, goes, oh, that's a good-looking horse.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
He's like, yeah, I don't do that kind of stuff. And he, like, rolls it up and puts it in his shirt pocket. Like you weren't supposed to see that. That's a controlled picture. But before they leave the office, the pornographer gives them the name and address, and then the same cop character, he picks up one of the pictures and he's like, I don't care for the lighting, and then he's like, you don't care for the lighting, and he's like, nice hips though, nice hips. Like the pornographer's just repeating everything he says, like, why are you even talking to me about this? Just get the hell out of here, go do what you're doing, leave me alone. But for some reason, they go to the wrong house with this information.
This seems like a weird thing to have in the movie at all. Like, why even have them go to the wrong house?
Well, you need another turn. But also, I think the implication might be that even if
running long enough,
even though he is using his real name, maybe he's using his neighbor's address and going through his neighbor's mailbox.
That'll throw them off. They'll never find me.
But it's like literally like 10 feet away from his door.
Yeah, and the neighbor knows everything about that. He's like, he's a weirdo.
Oh, he's a creepy photographer named Kirk Smith. He murders women at night. No, he doesn't say that.
He didn't say that part.
But so they go to this wrong house and bust in without a warrant. And when the guy comes in, the homeowner comes in, the wrong guy, they surround him with guns and he freaks out and drops a suitcase, which they open, and it's just full of toys. Because he's a toy maker who literally just fills his briefcase with toys and goes off to the toy factory to toy all day.
What, Santa Claus?
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that. He looks young. I haven't seen him this young before, Santa Claus. But he says, oh, you're looking for my murderer neighbor. He's crazy, and he murders. And they're like, oh, okay. So they go to that place, and they're like, oh, yeah, it says murder on the door. And there's murder everywhere.
Look at, he's got all the crazy stuff in here, and we got
all the pictures, and there's blood and murder. And he's like, oh, that's interesting. Look at this. He's got a big pile of pictures of you and that psychologist that you've been dating for some reason. And he's like, okay, that's a problem. He's probably at her house. So you go to the police, and I'm going to go to her house by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Good plan.
And so he goes to her home. He immediately gets in a scuffle with Kirk, who has, in the ensuing 20 minutes, like, tied the psychologist to a chair and gagged her. And he's like, she's like the main prize of his entire thing, because he's taken out all of her patients, and now he wants to kill her. When the cop shows up, he's able to shoot Kirk once, and while he's lying bleeding on the floor, he handcuffs him behind his back.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that was really anticlimactic. And then you just get this really long shot of him lying face down on the ground and just going, and I was like, he's not going to break these handcuffs, is he? And sure enough, he breaks the handcuffs. He gets back into the room, and before the cop can get a shot off, they're shoving each other back and forth. But eventually it's kind of pointless.
Well, I love what the cop does after he gets him handcuffed. He goes in, ungags her, and unties her, and then just puts his head in her lap.
Yeah.
Like, comfort me.
Yeah.
I've had a hard day.
You don't know what I've been through today. But they shove each other back and forth a bit, and then Kirk tries to run out of the building, and McCabe shoots him like 12 times in the back.
Yeah.
And then he falls into a pool.
In super slow motion.
Yeah.
Like, these bullets coming one after the other. And
This would be very problematic. How many of these bullet holes had entry wounds in the back, though?
Yeah. But then he falls into the pool, and he's all, "Adios, creep."
Which apparently he improvised that line. I totally believe.
And I was so excited with that line. One, because I was looking at the running times, like, oh God, this movie's almost over. Please let that be the last line. I don't want any, like, epilogue. I just want this to
don't mess it up. Just adios, creep, credits. And that's what they did.
Well, but they hold on a freeze frame
of the splash
in the pool, and I thought that the video had ended and it was just stuck on that last frame. And I was like, oh, okay, the movie's over. I guess the video player just got hung up on that last frame, but the counter's still ticking. No. So what is happening? Oh, there are the credits.
That's the freeze frame. That's a terrible freeze frame.
Very long freeze frame.
Yeah.
With no audio. All you hear is the audio popping from, like, whatever film this was transferred from.
Right, yeah.
And I was like, there's no audio. It's a freeze frame. There's no music. What is happening?
And that's the end of the film. And that's the only directing credit for Robert Hammer, which actually Edgar Wright, when he credits the Hammer films stylistically for Don't, but the Hammer films have no relation to Robert Hammer, who directed this film. It was written by the director and Michael D. Castle, who, as we said, played the CSI character. This was his only script that he ever wrote, but he will be coming back later this year for Galaxina, which is like the Barbarella ripoff. The novel was written by Michael Curtis, who has no other credits on IMDb. It doesn't mean he didn't write any more books, but he wrote the book Nightline that this was based on. Nicholas Worth, who plays the killer here, is also the Reaper in The Hills Have Eyes 2. He played Polly in Darkman. He does a lot of video game voices, including Premier Romanov in the Command and Conquer series. And he played a henchman on the Pirates episode of MacGyver.
Oh.
Do you remember that one?
I do remember that one.
He was one of the two guys that, like, took over this military installation island.
Yeah, with all the landmines.
Yeah. Chuck Mitchell, who plays Sam Gluckman, the pornographer, was Porky from Porky's.
Yeah.
And Porky's 2. He's also Rocco in Better Off Dead.
I thought you were going to go somewhere else with that for a second.
No, not Modern Life. And the woman who says, oh, that house there with the green door, her name is Eileen Castle, and this is her only movie. I think she's the screenwriter's mom.
Yeah, I would say
I'm not 1,000% sure on that, but I would bet money that was the case. Jess, what do you think, up or down on this one?
Oh, it's a big down. Big down.
Yeah, that's a no.
There's a thumb way up from me. I actually really enjoyed the film, and I know that the murder rape scenes are very brutal.
Yeah,
but I actually don't think they're poorly done from a filmmaking perspective. I think they're actually really well done in that they're terrifying. And honestly, I like all of the dialogue with the cops. I think the cops are funny and believable the whole time. But I really enjoyed this film. Letterboxd rank.
So I put it just above To All a Good Night, which then puts it below Windows for me.
Okay.
This is actually going to go into my number 2 spot from the bottom.
Above Caligula?
Just above Caligula?
Above Caligula, but below Just Tell Me What You Want.
Interesting.
Wow.
Just Tell Me What You Want is moving up.
Moving up in the world.
I'm putting this movie smack dab between our male prostitutes. This is going just below American Gigolo, but above Cruising.
Oh, interesting.
So right in the middle there.
Always good to put some brutal rape in between your male gigolos.
That's true. That's an important thing to do. I think that's everything for this one. If you guys have any thoughts you'd like to share, we are Vintage Video Pod on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Or as I've said before, you can find each of our full movie rankings for the year. We can also be found at vintagevideopodcast.com. Please consider rating us on iTunes to help people find the show. And if you take the time to leave us a review, we will thank you personally in an upcoming episode. If you're feeling especially generous, you can also support the show through patreon.com/vintagevideopodcast. Speaking of which, we have our first $5 Patreon subscriber, Costadinos. Thank you so much for your contribution.
What?
Yeah, we're surprising Richard with this live on the show.
What? Costadinos.
Not only that.
Am I saying that right?
I believe so.
All right.
It's either Costa or Costa. Tell us if we're messing it up, but I think it's Costa. Costa's great. He's been a listener for a long time from back when we were doing the MacGyver show. And he's already placed his vote for our movie for the next month.
Okay.
So there are 3 options for the next month's review. It was Airport, Gamera versus Jiger, and The Ballad of Cable Hogue. And he selected The Ballad of Cable Hogue.
All right.
Woo-woo.
Good.
So,
That's what we
which
wanted.
is kind of the one we were pulling for. We shouldn't be choosing favorites, but if anybody wants to change the results, you're going to need to sign up twice. Because that's the one we wanted to do anyway. So thank you very much, Costa, for your contribution. We appreciate it. And thank you for being a returning listener to the show. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you will join us next time when we will be discussing Foxes, which Wikipedia calls a 1980 American coming-of-age drama. It revolves around a group of teenage girls coming of age in suburban Los Angeles towards the end of the disco era.